Welcome to The Commute, a Bible study podcast designed to turn your commute into an opportunity to grow in your faith. Whether you're sure of what you believe or you're not sure what to believe, this podcast is designed to help you better understand who Jesus is, what the Bible's all about, and how that applies to your life today. I'm your host, Pastor Matt, and I'm excited to dive into this week's episode of The Commute. Well, hey, welcome to The Commute. I'm Pastor Matt.
And I'm Pastor Casey.
And today we're going to dig into the Gospel of Luke. You know, we're in this true series that we're doing here at Bethlehem. So if you haven't had a chance to watch week one, I'd encourage you go back, watch week one, and then get a chance to track with us in the series, whether in person or in person or virtual venue. Anyway, is a great way to get to see it. But today you're going to Luke this week. Finish out that chapter of John, transitioning into the Gospel of Luke. Remember, we've got a strong emphasis on the Gospels this year, giving you some more time to just dig into those each and every day. And, today, as you read the opening to Luke, Pastor Casey and I were having a really engaging conversation. And why don't you just tell them what you were talking about, what you love so much about the opening of Luke?
What I find cool or unique about the opening of Luke is it's the one gospel that begins with what feels like and sounds like a bit of an explanation as to what you're going to get in the book, to set your expectations. You know, I remember being in middle school and teachers hammering home, whenever you read a book, read the preface. And I thought, what? Read the preface? I don't want to do that. I want to read a minimum amount of words here. The preface isn't actually a part of the book. No, I'm going to start with chapter 1. But as I have matured a little bit, I see great value in the preface most of the time, because it's the author giving you a glimpse into why he or she wrote the book, and it orients your expectations. And a lot of times will tell you a lot of really helpful stuff before you dig into the meat of the thing. And what you get at the beginning of Luke feels to me like a preface that sets expectations and gives insight into what's coming next and why it's there in the first place.
Yeah, so if you're listening along, you can listen if you've got the Bible around you, or you're watching on YouTube. And you want to pull out your smartphone Bible. We're going to read Luke chapter 1. I'm just going to read those first 4 verses. It says, "Inasmuch as many have undertaken to compile a narrative of the things that have been accomplished among us, just as those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word have delivered them to us, it seemed good to me, in also having followed all things closely for some time past, to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, that you may have certainty concerning the things that you have been taught." So a couple things kind of stick out there. One, you hear about this guy, Theophilus, and you get the idea that maybe he's a Christian, somebody that's been taught the faith, but he's also probably the one that kind of promoted and paid for Luke's work. Kind of like patronage was a big thing. So if you ever heard of the site Patreon, where you can support artists and writers and musicians and things like that, there was a lot of patronage that went on when people would write books and stuff like that. And so, Theophilus is probably a big supporter in the church. And so Luke is saying, hey, let me pull together this account to help give you certainty around that. Can you also give us some more background just on who Luke is, Casey?
Yeah. So what is interesting here is Luke does not give his name, but we have good reason to believe that this is written by a man named Luke, who is a companion of Paul. He's also the guy who wrote the book of Acts. So we see Luke mentioned in the book of Acts and some of the narratives traveling around with Paul there in some of Paul's letters. Paul will refer to Luke, the beloved physician. So this is the guy who penned this gospel account. And from what Paul says, about him being a physician. It appears he's into some kind of medical practice, and in the way that he writes, it is some of the most sophisticated and complicated Greek there is in the New Testament. So he appears to be somebody with significant education and knowledge and skills with a pen. So that's some of what comes to mind about Luke off the cuff. Is there anything else that I'm forgetting? I know there's stuff that I'm not
No,
saying.
I think that's huge. I think it's oftentimes important to take a little time when you're beginning a book just to get the sense of, who was the author, who was the audience, what's going on, and understanding a little bit more about Luke really helps you begin to unpack, some of the detail that you see there, especially the detail in like the crucifixion accounts and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just neat to know who Luke is and where he's coming from as he kind of writes this book. But I think it's also really interesting. We're talking, he really sets up not just who he's writing for and his goal of writing, but he's also setting up our goal, I think, in reading the scriptures. Because I think a lot of times, you can take the Bible, if you take the Bible out of its intended purpose, I think a lot of times we struggle to understand why the Bible doesn't do anything, or not do anything, but kind of make an impact or cause so much damage. Well, I think that's because we pull it out of its intended purpose. And here, Luke is giving you a solid picture into the intended purpose of the Bible, which is to give you God's words, to give you an encounter with God, to give you a snapshot of who he is and who the gospel is, and to allow that to engage with you so that you have certainty in the hope that you hold on to. I don't know. How would you put it?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Luke describes in these first 4 verses is a really fascinating kind of process. So he's hinting at, in as much as many others have tried to put together an orderly account, acknowledging that there are people who are putting together some kind of account or narrative of the things Jesus did and taught. Luke's saying, I'm contributing to that effort, and I'm going to do it myself. But I want you to know that as I'm doing this, I'm somebody who's been following things closely from the beginning. Just as, the eyewitnesses who handed these things down to us have done. So what I see here is a process that looks like, hey, there have been people who've been sharing this account of Jesus for a while now. There are people who've been sharing it orally. There are even others who have undertaken the task of writing this stuff down, which would have been a considerable effort in this time period. But so Luke is entering that process, but he's not entering it lightly. He's taking this thing seriously, and seems to have some really unique kind of eyewitness testimony too. So like in Luke, for example, you have the lengthiest birth narrative of any of the Gospels. Really, like the Christmas story we read about Jesus being born in Bethlehem, that comes from Luke. You have extended accounts of what happens with, John the Baptist and his parents, Elizabeth and Zechariah. So you get the sense that Luke is engaging with these people somehow, perhaps firsthand, perhaps through some secondhand accounts of people who are close to figures like Mary and Zechariah and whatnot. So I see that as just a really fascinating process of being meticulous in getting this thing written down, all for the purpose of giving certainty to what has already been taught, right? That's what Luke says. So the recipients of this gospel have already received something of Jesus. They've been taught his way, so to speak. And this gospel account here is there to solidify or certaintize what has already been handed down to them. I think it's just fascinating. I don't know if that answers the question. I don't remember exactly where we were going with this, but those are the things, some of the
No.
things that come to my mind.
Yeah, I definitely think it does. It's kind of cool too because, it's that idea that, I like the point that you just made about, to write something down was a big deal. It was an expensive process. To copy something was a lengthy and arduous kind of process. It's not like today. I think today we hear him say written down and we think, yeah, I write a lot of things down. I wrote my grocery list down. I wrote my, all that kind of stuff down. And in that culture, it's just not like that. Not everybody can write. Not everybody can read. Not everybody is a quote unquote scribe. So, I think just the fact that many people are undertaking to write accounts and looking to write that account is just the power, the impact, and the importance of Jesus. This man from Nazareth that is a no-name kind of little country bumpkin town, an area that's kind of so insignificant that if Jesus wasn't there, you wouldn't know it existed, kind of thing. And, he literally reshaped the world. And so I think that's kind of a cool thing that comes in that is it just shows you in the fact that things are being written down, how important this is. And he's also giving you eyewitness testimony. It's kind of like, I think a lot of times we forget that at the time these things were written down, they were written down so close to the life of Jesus that other people that were actually there would have been around to say, didn't happen that way. Or that's not who Jesus is. It's kind of like writing a book in a time period where somebody can easily search on Instagram and see 100 different social feeds of people that were at the event. That's the scriptures. Like there were enough people around to say, nope, didn't happen that way. So yeah, I think that's just a really cool thing. And it kind of shapes how we view the scriptures.
Yeah. And I think for you all, as you approach this book in the reading plan, approach it with the mindset of, this exists to solidify some of the things that I've maybe already heard or somebody has taught me about Jesus. And ask yourselves the question as you're reading, how does this story change or solidify my knowledge of Jesus, my experience of Jesus, my relationship with Jesus? And I think you'll find that some cool stuff happens because we believe the word is living and active. And I believe that the Gospel of Luke accomplishes what it's set out to do.
No, I totally agree. And I think too, just as you're reading the Bible, realize that, just the importance people put in to giving you something that, like Luke says, is going to give you certainty. They didn't just throw this together. They saw this was a story about God and they wanted to get it right. And they didn't realize maybe as much that God was guiding the hand. But that's kind of the cool thing with scripture. So yeah, I'm excited that we get to dig into a little bit of Luke. Now it'll kind of this week will get you prepped for Christmas, right? Because, hey, you know what? There's probably already Christmas stuff out there, right? Because it's only October. But
I didn't even think about that.
It's a great story to get to dig into. So I'm glad that we get to spend some more time in Luke. So thanks for taking time. I want to encourage you, keep digging into that truth series. Feel free to share these resources out with others. If you find it's a benefit to you, please feel free to support Bethlehem and the ministry, and feel free to share it out. But till next time, it's been a joy hanging out with you right here on The Commute. Thanks for checking out this episode of The Commute. For more information on The Commute or to join the Commute Bible reading plan, simply download the Bethlehem Church Live mobile app or go to bethlehemchurchlive.com/thecommute.